In this video, I'm going to show you how to add a new customer into Gorilla Desk. There's two ways to do it. I'm going to show you both ways, but there's one way that's more common and I'll show you why. So let's go ahead and dive into it. So a customer calls up and they said, hey, I found you guys wherever and want to try your service. Typically what's going to happen is you're going to have a technician that's vacant. They have vacancy, they have openings on a specific day. And so you're going to start with looking at that technician's route. And so you might say, okay, Victor has availability on Thursday. Will that be soon enough for you? Or I've got Thursday at whatever time. Is that going to work for you? Now, the way you do that is by obviously looking at their calendar, and you can see when they have vacancy. And the other thing that you can do is you can zoom in to their map and you can see where the technician is. And we want to kind of guide the customer to a specific time, whatever's most convenient and most optimized for us, obviously. So let's say the customer lives right here, and we know that we're going to be here on this day. That would be the most optimized time to put that customer on the route. Now, with that said, that is in a perfect world. And as you will quickly learn with scheduling, you don't live in a perfect world. And so we just do the best that we can. What I mean by that is, let's say the customer lives right here and they're literally like a minute from Monica Burton. It would be ideal to put them on that route right before or after Monica Burton. That would be ideal. However, the reason it doesn't work that way is because that route might already be filled. And so there's just no availability there. In which case you might have to look at the next best time. But whatever day you're going to put it on, just try to make it as optimized for that day as you can. So for example, let's say if you're scheduling for a Thursday and that day is the yellows here and they live right here, I would try to put it next to this appointment, number 6, or this appointment right here, which is number 12. And if you put on one of those 2 days, that would be the most optimized. Again, we don't live in a perfect world. We can't always have the most optimized route as is possible. Well, I'm saying possible as in like a hypothetical way. So we just do the best that we have considering the circumstances. So once you get to the point where you're like, okay, this is the time, will it work for you, Mr. Customer, Mrs. Customer? And they say, yep, that will work. What you typically do in order to add the customer is, let's say you told them 10 a.m. and that will work for them. So what you do is you just go ahead and click on right here and it will say new job. And so you go ahead and click on new job. And before you put the job in, you've got to add a new customer. If you're doing a reschedule, a reservice for a customer that's already in our system, then you would just click on their name right here. However, this video is trying to teach you how to add a new customer into our system. And so this is somebody that's not currently with us, in which case you click on this link right here that says add a new customer. And then this will allow you to enter all of the customer's information. So I'm going to go ahead and fill this out. Mine will autofill because I'm using my own information. This little box just pulled up that says a customer already exists with this service address. And that's because for this hypothetical, for this example of how to add, I'm adding my own account, which as you can see, I put them down in under John Doe. So if you ever get this message, it probably means that you got the address wrong, or we're servicing an account for a house that we've already serviced in the past. Maybe somebody's moved out. In this case, that's not an issue, obviously, because I know that account exists and I'm just doing a demo here. So you click on that, add a new customer, you fill out all of this information, get their first name, their last name, you want to get their email. The company, you don't have to put if they don't have one, if needed, but that's not usually something that we enter. The source, that is a question that you want to answer. It is required. Just ask them. If they don't tell us, then you can just leave it blank, but we ask them every single time. Additional contact information. This is the service address, this first one. The second one is the billing address. Usually the billing address and the service address are the same. Not always, but most of the time. If it's different, if we're servicing their say their business, but they want to get the bills at their house, then that would be a different service address, and it allows for that. The messaging preferences. You want this to be just like this. I've got a picture here. So you want this box to be both email, both email. ideally, unless they ask differently or unless they specify differently. So you can compare here. By default, it's just email on all of them. We changed the first one and the second one and the fourth one to both. So what that means is appointment email confirmations, we're going to send them an email and an SMS, a text. The second one, we're going to send them an email and a text. The third one, we're going to send them only an email. The broadcast will send both, and then for late payment reminders, we do only email. When you get done with that, go ahead and click Save, and it'll put that in there. Add a credit card in Stripe. This is if the customer has a credit card that they want to keep on file and set up an auto pay system. That's not common when you're adding a new customer. So typically when you're adding a new customer, you're not going to take payment right there. All you're going to do is just schedule the appointment, and then that's it. Now, once you get done with all this, you can click Save, but that's not normally what you want to do, because we don't want to just save the customer. We want to save the customer and, which is why it says Save and. We want to save the customer and we want to complete adding our new job. What that means is that we've just put the customer's information into our system, but there's no job associated with it. So the system doesn't know, is this general pest control? Is it a bed bug job? It doesn't know the price. It doesn't know the products that we're using. It doesn't know how often we're going to be there. All of that is the job. All we've put in there is just the customer's information, name, address, phone number, those things. So now we're in adding the new job. So that's what this next screen is. So we start with adding a new service. Now, typically, the majority of what you add will be initial services, but you'll just enter whatever it is. And so is it a bed bug control service? Is it an initial service for residential? Is it an initial service for commercial? And you can obviously learn the difference between all of these, and that'll be something you'll be trained on. But for the sake of this video, I'm just showing you how to put it into the system. We're going to go ahead and click on Initial Service for Residential. Now, when you click on this, it has a template that automatically pulls up with it. So initial services are just designated by default 1 hour in time. Now you can see here, it already pulled up 6:11 and it pulled up 10 a.m. And that's because that's what I clicked on over here. So I clicked on the calendar, and then by default, it remembers that I clicked on June 11th at 10 a.m. and automatically populated that. Initial services are always not repeated. Even if the customer wants an ongoing service, you just put it in as a one-time service. And the reason is because we need to go to their house first. The technician has to look at it, and then the technician has to decide, okay, do I want to recommend them do a monthly service, an every other month service, a quarterly service, an annual service, a one-time service? The tech will decide all that. In the office, you don't need to do that. So just leave the repeat off. Again, it's automatically assigned to Victor. Why? Well, it's because I clicked on Victor's schedule right here. And so it, by default, already has listed Victor. Always confirmed, that is always going to be no. I can't think of a situation where you would change that. But this job status, by default, it's unconfirmed, and by default, you want to make it confirmed. And so you're going to click right here, and it will give you the option to change it. Now, my mouse is going slow here. Okay, there it goes. So you click on confirmed, and now it's a confirmed appointment. You don't have to mess with lock, and then you can add notes. Now, a couple things. With the notes, anything that you put on here will be a job note, meaning it's a note specifically for this one job that we're doing right here and now, not all jobs that we ever do. If we're adding a note for all jobs, it would be a top note, and you can learn more about that in the video that's coming up, which is notes. Just know that this is not a top note, which is not a permanent forever note on all jobs. It just applies to this one job that you're setting up right now, just the initial service. Now there's two other tabs up here, the invoice and the material. If you're setting up an initial service, you don't change either of those, you just leave them as is. However, for the sake of this video, I'm going to show you what they are and why and how we use them. And that way you'll be able to understand, because there will be situations where you do want to update that. So let's go ahead and click on it. The invoice records the line item. which is usually the frequency of service. So is this going to be a monthly, a quarterly, a one-time service, every other week and every other month, etc., etc. It also has the price of the service, which by default is $180. On the initial service, it has the discount, and it also has some other information down here, which is pre-populated. This is the terms of the service, and then this right here has the price of the subsequent services. The reason that you don't change any of these as an office receptionist on an initial service for general pest control, just regular bugs, the reason you don't change that is because we don't know what it's going to be yet. We need to send a technician out, and then the technician can look at their problem. He can look at the infestation, and then he can determine, should it be a monthly? Should it be a quarterly? Should it be whatever? And since we don't know, we just leave it blank. And then the technician, when he gets out, he'll look at this and he'll be like, okay, monthly treatment, discount. It's all default standard. That means they haven't changed it. So that's what that tab is. Now, there will be some situations where, for whatever reason, you already know what this is going to be, or maybe the technician doesn't have cell reception or data reception, and they want you to get on and help out. There may be situations where you get on and manipulate this. And so that's why I wanted you to understand what this tab is, but just know that you don't typically use it. So what we would do here, if we did know that it was going to be a quarterly service, we would go ahead and change that to quarterly. We would change this to $180, and then we'd apply the discount, whatever discount we were going to give to the customer on the first treatment, which normally we give people about a 50% or so discount on the first treatment. And it does a couple of things. It helps to build a good relationship with the customer. And the second thing that it does is we set up an agreement that we say, we're giving you this discount based on the assumption that you're going to try our services for 1 year. And if you cancel before that 1 year, you have to pay back that discount. So that's what that's used for. And then right here in the notes, we put the price that the customer is going to pay for subsequent services. Again, this isn't something that you typically fill out. I just want you to know what it is. Now the materials, I'll just explain what that tab is. The technician, when he goes out there, he's going to use certain products, whether it be a general insecticide or baits or whatever. By default, we have certain products that are commonly used, and we just have them on the invoice. What it does, for the sake of the technician, is it saves him a little bit of time. And so he doesn't have to add them. Since we use Bifin on pretty much every service when we're in the Bifin cycle, this just makes it so the technician doesn't have to go in and add that to every single invoice that's already in there. It saves, a few seconds every single time we do a service. But again, that's not something that you manipulate. Just know that you don't have to change anything with that. So once you fill out all this information, you get scheduled on the right date, you just hit save, and voila, you're done. Now that customer is in the system, he's on the route, and he is on the time that we scheduled it for. So if you remember at the beginning, I said we were going to put it on July 11th at 10 a.m. and here he is. He's green, and the reason is because a green represents a confirmed appointment. If you remember, when I was filling it out, I said you want to click it as confirmed. Why do we do that? Well, it's because you're talking with the customer, and so you are confirming that time with the customer right there on the phone. And that way the technician knows that this appointment has already been set with the customer knows that we're coming, and the customer expects us to be there on time. The reason that's different is there's some appointments that are gray, and these are appointments that the system has just automatically generated. The customer may or may not know that we're going to be there, and in most cases with gray services, the customer does not know that we're coming. So this is just a confirmed appointment, and we know it's a confirmed appointment. You can't just go in there and move it around because the customer is expecting it. If we move a green appointment, the customer has to be notified. Now, I said at the beginning of this video that there are two ways to add a customer. What I just did is I clicked on the calendar and clicked add new job. The other way is that you can come up and add this, or click on this button right here, this purple button that says add new. The reason that we don't usually use that is because it just adds a couple of extra steps. If we click on add a new customer, what it's going to do is it's going to take us to the new customer field, and then we put in the customer, and then we hit save and add a new job. If we do it that route, when we go in and add the new job, it will not by default put the time and the day that we selected, and it will also not put the technician. And so we'll have to know both of those and put them on there. And because of that, we typically, when adding new customers, we just start from the calendar view, click there, click new job, and then click add a new customer. It's about the same amount of clicks to begin with, but the benefit is now when I click save and add a new job, it knows the time and it also knows the tech. So that's the other way to do it. Again, it's usually more efficient to go through the calendar, but either portal will get you to the same place. Now, really quick, I'm going to show you two other things. The first is when you're creating the invoice, when you're scheduling that appointment, up here it says invoice number. If you ever get a box that pops up that says this invoice number is already in use, what that means is that in the amount of time that you were scheduling an appointment, another tech went out and scheduled a new appointment, and that invoice number got taken, which if that happens, all you do is you just come up here and you just do the next sequential number. And so if this number right here, which ends in 2746 is already taken, you just simply change it to 2747. And then you try again. If that doesn't work, then go 2748. If that doesn't work, then 2749, 2750, and so on and so on. Now, there are times when we're really busy that you might have to go ahead maybe 4 or 5 different numbers before you get an open invoice that we can use. The essence of what's happening here is we can only have one invoice number for each invoice. We can't use the same invoice number for multiple invoices. The system will not allow us to do that, and for good reason. Because if somebody says, I've got an invoice number, can you look it up? That has to be a unique number. We can't type in an invoice number and have it pull up 2 different invoices because it'd just be confusing, obviously. And so you'll have to find an open number. Again, that may happen. If there's ever a situation where you try invoice number after invoice number after invoice and it's just not working, then it's probably a glitch in the system, in which case you might want to just close out of that and then go back in from scratch and do the whole thing over again. Now, one other thing I want to mention, when you're adding a customer, when you do your message preferencing, go back to here, by default, this will automatically go to whatever phone number that you put in. However, if there are 2 phone numbers, you'll have to select which number that you want it to be. So if you're on the phone with the customer and they've got 2 of them, you'll just ask them which one of these is your cell, which one of them is your landline. It's really important that you do that correctly, because if by default it goes to the first number, if that number happened to be a landline, then we're going to send a bunch of text messages to that customer forever. And they're never going to get any of them because it's going to the landline and we don't know. And by the way, those text messages, while they don't cost us very much, they do cost us a little bit. We pay a few cents every time we send one out. So if we do send text messages, we want to make sure that customers are getting those. Besides the money point of it, it's obviously we just want that communication to go out. That's why we're sending it, because we want the customer to get it. So make sure you get the right SMS in there. The email, not typically we have 2 emails, but if there are 2 emails on the account, then go ahead and put which email you want it to be, and then update your message preferencing. And I think that is all I have on this video. We'll catch you on the next one.